Welcome to the briefing, an analysis of current events from a Christian worldview. My name is Amle Isma. Friends, let me start today with these questions. How many presidents do you know who choose to return to their little house to live a simple life? Or how many presidents do you know who built houses for ordinary citizens with their own hands and tools? Or how many presidents do you know to return to teach Sunday school class at the former church every single Sunday? How many presidents, guys, do you know do that kind of stuff? No one, right? Not so fast. I actually know one president. His name is Jimmy Carter. As you know already, President Jimmy Carter's funeral was conducted a few days ago, and he had lived for 100 years. Now, I hear people say, well, no regrets, he lives a long time, he lived his life. But I think it's not the 100 years that matters first, but the quality of life that President Jimmy Carter lived. So I won't have time here to highlight every single accomplishment that, President Jimmy Carter made within his lifetime. Like the Camp David Accords, that facilitate the first peace agreement with Israel and Egypt. Remember that, right? So President Jimmy Carter played an important role on this agreement. And also, he has helped so many countries, including Haiti. His organization, has helped people from various backgrounds and cultures to achieve a better life. Like I said, it's not my goal here to talk about every single achievement of President Jimmy Carter. Nevertheless, I will put, the link of his foundation called the Carter Center in the description of this video, okay, so you can better familiarize yourself with his works. His foundation is called the Carter Center. It was founded in 1981, okay. Well, what I like about President Jimmy Carter, and this is very important, this is the most important part of this podcast today. What I like about President Jimmy Carter is his approach to life as a simple human being. Do you hear me? Do you hear what I said? What I like about him is his approach to life as a simple human being. Now, if you understand this simple statement, you already understand everything that I'm about to say, okay? So, let me give you now 3 key examples that I think made President Jimmy Carter's life so impactful. First, his family. Yes, his family, particularly his mother, Miss Lillian, who taught him to treat everybody with respect and compassion. Guys, President Jimmy Carter's mom, Miss Lillian, she was a nurse. She was known, guys, listen to this, as the only white nurse who treated black patients. She also welcomed black women in her home. Now, we talk about a time of Jim Crow time, segregation time. And yet, her mom welcomed black women into her home. Of course, she did that when her husband wasn't at home. So, President Jimmy Carter lived around black people, okay? So, in fact, he explained in one of Oprah interviews that he was the only white child, in the neighborhood. All his friends were black. In fact, he grew up also in a peanut farm owned by his father, and his father also hired some black tenants, to take care of the farm. So, and if you listen to his interview, he will tell you that he was primarily impacted by some black ministers that came to his father's farm to minister to other black people. Since then, he wasn't so impacted by these black Christians. So the second example that I want to highlight on this podcast about President Jimmy Carter's life is his intentional effort to live a simple life. Now, it's one thing to live a simple life, but it's another thing to have the intention to live that simple life, So President Jimmy Carter was very intentional about that, to live a simple life. Guys, think about it. Jimmy Carter had climbed the ladder to the point that he became the 39th president of the United States. Yet, after losing his second term election, he decided to move back to his previous occupation, which was working as a peanut farmer. Interesting. You hear that well. He moved back to his previous occupation to work as a peanut farmer. And he also helped a lot in the organization called Habitat for Humanity, where he built homes for people, including homes for people in Haiti just after the earthquake. Listen to this, guys. President Jimmy Carter traveled to Haiti to help after the earthquake. Although he was already, I think he was 85 years old back then. And he traveled to Haiti to help. To do what? To build houses for people that were impacted by the earthquake. So he traveled to Haiti not as a visitor, as many of American officials do. Oh, I'm going to Haiti to help, and you find out they are just having a good time in the upper areas of Port-au-Prince. They're not involved in helping people at all. But President Jimmy Carter traveled to Haiti to work as a hard-working volunteer to build houses. Isn't that great? So the third and final example I would like to highlight about President Carter, listen to this, is his humility in God's kingdom. And this is key. His humility in God's kingdom. As a former president, as a Nobel Prize, remember, he won the Nobel Prize, he received the Nobel Prize in 2002. So, as a former president of the US, you will expect him to shoot for a higher position in ministry, especially when he returned to his home church. You will expect President Jimmy Carter to become the pastor of the church or something similar, after he returned. But no, he continued teaching Sunday school at his home church. Do you hear that? As a former president, we guys would expect him to, go for a higher position in ministry, right? Like to become a pastor or to become something similar in his home church. But no, President Jimmy Carter continued to teach Sunday school class at his home church. Now, if this is not the heart of a servant leadership, I do not know what else is. So, I'm saying this to tell you guys that President Jimmy Carter demonstrated his faith and love for God toward his life by showing care to the poor, as it is in Matthew, as the Bible calls us to do. So, I want to conclude this with President Jimmy Carter's own words when he received the Nobel Prize in 2002. He said, quote, "War may sometimes be a necessary evil, but no matter how necessary, it is always an evil, never a good. The bond of our common humanity is stronger than the divisiveness of our fears and prejudices. God gives us the capacities for choice. We can choose to alleviate suffering. We can choose to work together for peace. We can make these changes, and we must." Without further ado, let me say, rest in peace, Mr. President, good and faithful servant of the Lord Jesus. You show us the true servant leader's heart. You live a meaningful life. Rest in peace.
Yeah, but folks in the plains, they don't ever think about calling me anything except Jimmy and Rosalynn.
Some of them call you Mr. Jimmy.
Well, yeah, some of them do. In fact, some of the little tiny kids call me Jimmy Carter, and if they are Baptists, they probably call me Brother Jimmy.
Of course, he is former.
I'm not sure the world would have found out about Habitat if President and Mrs. Carter in 1984 hadn't gotten on that bus and taken a group of volunteers up to New York to do that first big rehab project.
President Carter has participated in project builds with Habitat for Humanity for some 40 years, including a 2-week trip to Haiti I had the chance to go on with the Carters about 10 years ago. President Carter was turning 88 at the time, and he set the pace for everyone.
With each effort and every kind gesture, optimism is growing in a place that has been so short on hope. 2 rows over, a former president follows the identical blueprint alongside the one he says has been boss.
I'm a pretty professional carpenter by now.
You can direct the team.
Well, she does.
We took off our hard hats for a bit to talk about the last 30 years of service.
We always get more out of it than we put into it helping others. It's an adventure. It's unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen next. And it's challenging. It's hard work.
That's us going to school. We went to a little Creole school.
The Carters even took time to look at my family pictures and asked me about my experiences living in Haiti.
And this is the water tank here.
Then took me on an unexpected tour.
Irrigation. See the irrigation pipes going down?
Gracious and genuine to everyone.
We'll finish about 350 houses.
They say it's part of demonstrating their faith.
How do you bridge the tremendous gap between rich people that have everything in the world and a family that has never had a decent home? But Habitat gives you that way to communicate with each other. So you learn to respect people that you, in the past, did not respect because you thought they were kind of inferior in some way. You learn that they're not inferior in any way.
1,200 miles separate Legon, Haiti from former President Carter's home in Plains, Georgia. But he says the hope for a better life, a safe place, dignity is the same for people everywhere.
A decent place to stay, and then just a little bit of self-respect, pride in something that you've done yourself, a little bit of hope for the future. I was
Of course,
the only
he is former
white child in the whole neighborhood. We had about 200 African Americans who lived in Archery, Georgia.
I was so struck by that.
Well, that's the way I lived, and my mother was a registered nurse. She worked sometimes all night long, and I was really raised by African American women, and so I grew up in you might say, a black culture. All my friends were African American, and the people with whom I worked in the field, and the people with whom I wrestled and fought, and the people with whom I went fishing and hunting were all African Americans. And so that was my life. And I felt kind of in an alien culture when I got old enough to go to a white school and